I'm gonna pop up in. So could you stop sharing the screen and then we can. I'm not sharing the screen. Hi there, thanks so much for being here today. We're really excited to listen to Nicholas talk about the magic of pastels. This is a new exhibition that we just opened, and so it opened on Friday, August 5th. And it's an exhibition presented by the Pastel Society of New Mexico. My name is Michelle Lantieri. I'm the curator of collections and exhibitions here at the Melissa Rogers Museum. And it's really been such a pleasure to work with Nicholas Tesluk, who's here to my right. He is the chair of this exhibition. So he and another team member, Marilyn Drake of the Pastel Society, they really brought this exhibition to us through a jurying process, and he'll talk more about the show itself. But we're so happy that you all are here. It's really an exciting time to learn more in depth about the medium and about the history of the medium, where it's going, how people are working with it today. And so just wanted to also let you know that the show runs through September 21st of this year. So there's about a month and a half to spend some time with these paintings. And then we also have a couple additional programs. We have 2 demonstrations by artists who are participating in the show. And so on August 14th, Sunday, August 14th at 1 o'clock, Toby Clement is going to be giving a demonstration here at the museum on the East Lawn in the tent there. And then on August 28th, we'll have Paul Murray, who's going to give a demonstration also at 1 o'clock. But I want to extend extreme gratitude to Nicholas Tesluk for all the work that you've done for this exhibition. Really excited to see where this goes in the coming years. So thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you. Welcome. As you may surmise, I'm passionate about the pastel medium. So I wanted to give a talk about basically the history and just what the medium is like and how it works. The magic pastel I used an illustration done by Carol Peebles. She's a great portrait artist. But I thought that was just absolutely a stunning way of showing pastel. It truly shows magic. I actually used it for Christmas readings for the Pastel Society. So next, please. Okay.
We're doing the screen share first. So.
Okay, sure. The portraits that I'm going to show early on in the presentation are from a exhibition that was shown a few years ago at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They're from the 18th century, and as you can kind of tell from this, they're as fresh looking as they were when they were painted hundreds of years ago. So with oil paints, you have the cracking, darkening, several things happen. With pastels, as long as they're preserved well, they last and last forever. So, next, please. What made this show really interesting was it discussed the hardships that went on during the 18th century. Today, if we want to buy a set of pastels, they're numbered, they're somehow graded so that you know what pastels you have. When you use it up, you order another one, looks exactly like that. In the 18th century, the pastels were made in their own little ateliers. They would take the pigments and bind them and make them into sticks, and never really had the same colors a second time, which isn't always bad, but it's nice to have the confidence in the colors again. So next, please. Next. Prior to 1780, pastels weren't mass produced. The Giraud company, which is still in full force today, was one of the first pastel companies to mass produce pastels. They do beautiful pastel colors, and they have a whole large grading of pastels. And again, the artist had to do it in their own atelier. And around the same time, glass formation changed. The French Royal Glass Works came up with finally being able to pour a 60 by 40 inch pane of glass, which prior to that time, it was 29 by 17, which is relatively small. And when you really stop to consider that was like the last innovation in plate glass for artists until just decades ago. Of course, there are larger size of plate glass that are made now, tempered glass and whatever, store windows that go to infinity. But it wasn't until a few decades ago that they came up with what's known as anti-reflective or museum glass. And that is what made it so you no longer saw your reflection in the glass of the painting, which is made. Pastels and oil painters have always been in kind of a competition. Both are opaque media, and with oil painting and pastel, use basically the same technique in art. But when you have glass that doesn't reflect, and then people aren't framing with the with mats, framing all the way to the edge, you can't tell the difference sometimes between an oil painting and a pastel. So it's great. These are some paintings that were done at that time, and this one it was actually on 19 3/8 by 39 3/8 by 31.5. So this is one of the larger ones once the glass became large. And he put down 4 pieces of blue laid paper that was laid on a canvas, and gorgeous work. Next slide. You can see the detail that he used in the lace and in the jewelry and everything. It's just absolutely stunning. Next slide, you see the buttons, the frill of the shirt. You know, a lot of times people don't think you can do fine detailed work with pastel, but it's amazing what you can do. Next, please. For artists, pastel portraiture was a lucrative business that could compete with oils, and with the new glass and everything, it did. There were no color shifts. When you were doing portraits, you didn't have to wait for part of it to dry, so you could do more in one day, not have to have the sitter come back again. And fewer tools and fewer people to be used in preparation too. So it was an innovation in pastel work once they were able to do it that way. Pigments. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about pigments. First of all, pigments are either man-made or earth pigments. You've heard of burnt sienna, burnt umber, raw sienna, raw umber. Those are earth pigments. Those are actually from the ground. And that they basically, the pigments are the same thing that cave painters used, you know, millions of years ago, and they're still lasting today. And then there are man-made ones. And the man-made ones, early on, they probably didn't know the toxicity of it, but at that time, vermilion was actually a arsenic sulfide, I believe. Red lead, as the name implies, is lead, and King's yellow was also another toxic. I think it was arsenic trisulfide. So they've exhumed bodies from the Renaissance era and have found high lead contents and many toxins that actually were absorbed through the skin into the bone. So nowadays, almost all of the pastels are non-toxic. They've actually come away. Cadmium oranges and cadmium reds were probably the most recent of the beautifully bright oranges and reds. However, cadmium was toxic. So they've found ways of actually replicating it in a non-toxic form, which is wonderful. So especially since we come in direct, oil painters do too. They're using the brushes and they're cleaning the brushes and everything. We're in direct contact with it, holding the pastel piece all the time. So next slide, please. And I don't know if I mentioned, but yeah, they were able to combine only 65 colors at the time into hundreds of colors. And what makes the pastel medium so special is their pigments are just laying in the dish there. I wanted to show what pigments are. They're just powder. And what they do is they take just enough binder to make a stick. Now people say, well, isn't that chalk? Well, no, chalk is not. Chalk is gypsum, and gypsum is basically like a rock. And it's just a dye, a fugitive dye. It's not a pigment color. With pastels, it's literally pigment with just enough binder to hold it together as a stick. So it's really wonderful. Gum tragicant and gum arabic were used in the early days to bind the pigments together. Nowadays, gum tragicant is still used for pastels, and because it doesn't adhere to itself as gum arabic does. Gum arabic is still used in watercolor though. So that's the separation of binders. And with the pigments going on dry the way they are for pastel, as I said, they don't darken. And they also, if you were to look at it through a magnifying glass, they have sort of a crystalline quality to it. They reflect in kind of different directions, and it makes it sort of have an inner glow in the pastel work. So it's a pretty amazing thing. With oil painting, the pigment is immersed in the oil, and so it doesn't have that kind of quality. And with watercolors, somewhat similar too. So there are these new things called pan pastels. I'm not doing an advertisement for the company. Some people hate them, some people love them, but they are almost like a little makeup compact type thing. And there is a binder on it. You can't tip it over and it all falls out, but you can basically just see the pigments like that. Next slide, you can see how they're applied, basically like with makeup sponges, sponges on the painting. And in the next slide, you'll see Enid Wood's painting. She I believe, has become a spokesman for the company now, and she does amazing work. She doesn't use all pan pastels. She does use regular pastels, but we watched her do a demonstration of one of these icebergs, and it was amazing. She did really wonderful things with the pan pastel. But like I said, traditional pastels, some of them just don't even want to try it. So next slide, please. Painting surface. Okay, I'm going to hand around my painting surface of choice, which is Cinelli part of this particular painting surface is a vegetable fiber. It isn't like sandpaper. It's a fine one, and the only hazard with it is you can't get it wet. Like if you're painting, don't sneeze on it because the vegetable fiber will just kind of flake right off if it gets wet at all. And some people like to do watercolor underlayments and stuff like that. So, but this is Cinelli à la carte at 500 times magnification. It almost looks like a boneyard, but it's kind of an interesting effect. But the feel of it is just a smooth, soft texture. You wouldn't think it would look like that in 500 times.
Does it come in different colors?
It does. And you can get it at like Jerry's Artorama, Dick Blake, the regular companies. And next slide. This is Color Fix paper. It's another one that's a famous brand, and it looks more like sandpaper to me, more like what you'd expect sandpaper to look like at 500 times. Next slide, please. And this is a paper that many of our artists use. UArt, they love UArt paper. And I would have thought when you actually have a piece of UArt in your hand and you look at the back side, it actually has the little numbers like 500, 300 grit, like a piece of sandpaper does. So you'd think that that would look more like sandpaper than that Color Fix did, but this looks more like broken glass actually. And this, I don't know what particular grade this one was. It could have been one of the coarser grades, but just kind of interesting to see it magnified. Yes.
What would the masters that were doing it back in the 1800s use?
There are people that still use like watercolor paper, and I don't know that they had much in the way of sanded paper, but anything that can kind of hold layers. And like this Sennelier, it's like a thin, it feels really nicely, but it holds like layers and layers of pastel, which is amazing. But yeah, even nowadays, there are people that use some of those French laid watercolor papers that work well for them. But yeah, but again, different styles. Also, they have possibly used in the past like a gesso type thing with maybe an abrasive in there and painted that. Several people do that. You can notice that in some paintings where they've actually painted like coarsely, and you can actually see where the brush strokes of the underlayment was. But again, different styles for different people, and it's great that there are so many. Did you have a question too?
Is there, if they use a heavier grit, people like certain styles of heavier grit that creates a different?
There are people that really like the heavier grit, and again, sometimes what Paul Murray will do is he'll use sort of a heavy grit in a gesso for one of its accentuated parts, and then he just kind of rubs the pastel lightly over that and gets the effect that he wants. It's kind of an interesting technique of doing that. So next slide, please. Mounting and framing. Okay, next. Matting with pastels, as you can see, is kind of becoming passé. Watercolors still use mattes, even those are going away. But again, with the look of a pastel trying to frame all the way to the edge and look more like an oil painting, there's not as much. But this is what the matted painting would look like. On the left is with a forward type bevel. And with forward bevel, sometimes you have trouble with pastel falling down and dirtying up the bevel. So they went to a reverse bevel so that if anything fell, it would fall on the inside of it. So as I said, it's kind of nice that the matting is getting fewer and fewer. So this is the way I mount my paintings, and many of us. We start out with a foam backing or cardboard backing on the bottom, and the pastel painting is next. And then there's a little spacer that we actually adhere to the glass all the way around on the underside of the glass, and then the glass goes on top. So you have a sandwich that has like about 1/8 of an inch of airspace between the painting and the glass. And that seems to work out very well. It keeps the painting so you can't really see that space from the glass, but it works really nicely in that way. The next method is, Sarah, I don't know about all of all of the painters, but Sarah Blumenschein uses this one exclusively. She has the backing, and then her painting is in there, and then the glass is right up against the painting. And then on both techniques, there's tape all the way around to make it hermetically sealed. So, there's varying thoughts on putting it right up against the glass. Some people say that if it goes to a humid climate, it might affect it, but she's never had any problems. So I would say that it's probably safe. Next slide. Glass. Let's talk about glass again. Once they came up with the museum glass, there's a difference, slight difference between museum glass, which is anti-reflective, or anti-reflective glass. But the museum glass has more of an ultraviolet blocking in it. It can only be put on one way. You can't, they tell you, there's a little strip on there that says this side towards the painting. It can only be put on one way. And it's about twice as expensive as anti-reflective. Anti-reflective has the same non-reflective capabilities, but you can put it on either side and it works well. I had a question the other day. Why do and I was intrigued. Why do some of the paintings have glass and why do some of them not have glass? And I said, well, they all have glass. It's just some of them you can't see your reflection in it. There's a bright light behind you. It'll show up in even non-reflective glass, but for the most part, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's just where you're actually able to see the painting itself. So.
Is there a big difference between the museum glass and non-reflective?
Just the UV properties of it. And there's UV protection in even regular glass and in the non-reflective, but there's more reflective, more UV resistance in the museum glass.
So they look about the same to
they look the same, you know, just exactly. So it's both of them are great. So, and we'll check out some of those paintings in pastel that I mentioned. There's just some of the beautiful things that they had at that exhibition in New York. I didn't go to the exhibition, but I have the catalog of them. And you can go to the next frame. Rosalba Carriera, she was an excellent portrait artist. I have a few of her works here. And she lived during that time and, you know, just did some beautiful work. Next slide, please. This is another one, and we'll show some close-ups here of this. The velveteen look in the hat and in the jacket are just gorgeous. She was a stunning artist.
Yeah. Wow.
And I thought this one was really nice. I have close up here too. Just the detail in these little coins and the drapery with the stripes like that, how beautiful it looks. The draping of it, not drapery, but draping. Nice one. And again, some close-ups of the work.
you get really fine detail. They have really fine pastel.
I'll speak a little bit later about it, but we have pastel pencils, and I've used them. And another technique, Brian Cobble, he's an excellent artist in Albuquerque, who does a lot of very fine detail work. He sharpens his pastels. He'll put an edge on it to get it to do everything that he needs to do, which is, you know, you actually waste a lot of pastel doing that, but you know, you get what you want with it. So, but and I'll speak a little bit more, like I said, a little later. just beautiful work. And like I said, these are hundreds of years old and look exactly as they were when you painted. Okay. Pastel, the enthusiasm faded toward beginning of the 19th century. It became something where the highfalutin people said that it was dusty and we no longer like it. You know, it went on the roller coaster ride and this was the downhill slope, like an art of an ancient regime. And then fortunately, the Impressionists brought it back to full glory in the 1870s, and most notably by Edgar Degas. Edgar Degas actually, most of his work was in the ballet. It was his attachment to ballet as a subject lasted his whole working life. By far the most important of all his subjects and half of his mature work was related to it. And we'll go through some. You'll notice that he uses the warm colors and cool colors expertly to kind of give that tension between the life and figures too. So. These are all pastels, and again, they've survived years and years. No cracks.
If you didn't have it covered in glass, would it fade or?
Probably not. You know, if you had it in sunlight, even covered in glass, it could probably fade. And we'll get into a little bit of preservation next. But yes.
Could we assume then, because they were limited by the glass size, that they didn't make bigger ones, or?
Yeah, but you know, they probably by the time of Edgar Degas, they probably had rather large sizes.
So those that are older with glass,
Mhm.
they don't convert them to the new non-reflective, or is that a no?
I would assume museums kind of leave it the way they had it originally. It would be great if they did, because that, you know, like I said, it takes a whole dimension out of it, the reflection of your face while you're looking at it, you know, so it's wonderful. And then we're going to do something completely, as Monty Python used to say, and now for something completely different. Frank Ray, he was a painter to the Longhorns. He was born in Illinois, and family moved to Texas, and he was kind of an inventor and an artist, and he created a working easel that you could use while you're in the field. That may be it, I'm not sure, but probably. And these are some of his paintings, and painted mostly scenes of cattle and cowboys and a lot of Texas scenes. So. I think the lightning is stunning on that one. I think we've done the high art of ballet, and we've done the aristocratic. This is Dallas from the west. So, preservation. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about preservation now. 1 foot candle is defined as enough light to saturate 1 foot square with 1 lumen of light. Now, you may be familiar with a lumen of light if you have some of these little solar yard lights, because some of them are just like 1 lumen or 3 lumens, you know. And a lumen is what the light intensity is. When in the old days, in the days of incandescent bulbs, the 40-watt bulb was dimmer than a 100-watt bulb, and of course all the ones in between. But a wattage is a heat designation. It's not a light designation. So the lumen is a much more accurate rating of how much light is produced by a bulb. An LED bulb that has a 60-watt equivalent is an equivalent of 60 watts is actually 815 lumens. And so by judging it by that, then you can actually get an effect of how much light. And the 1 lumen to 1 foot square that it's supposed to be a square is 1 foot candle. Now, the foot candle isn't the measurement of what's being emitted by the light, but what's being received by the painting or the wall. So next slide, please. Museums have generally limited the display of pastels to no more than 3 months at 5-foot candles. Nowadays, pastels are a lot more light fast. There's the UV protection on the glass. We don't hold the 5-foot candles anymore. And for longer periods of time, a light level of 3-foot candles should be maintained. So, but again, things have changed over the years now. So, 20th century to today, in 1972, Fleur Gifuni in New York created the Pastel Society of America that caused the renaissance of pastel worldwide, basically. And Pastel Society of America is still one of the top ones. So next slide. Pastel Society of New Mexico. It was founded in 1989 by a group of 12 artists that wanted to, 12 pastel artists that thought it would be really nice to start something. And we were basically on the cutting edge too, because things hadn't blossomed at that time. We had several, by them starting, the credo was to enhance the artwork of New Mexico and to awaken people to the medium of pastel. So, it was interesting. The first national show that we had there was at the American Furniture Warehouse, American Furniture in Albuquerque. So it was pretty interesting. And then it blossomed on since then too. Oh, and I wanted to just, on a side note, there was an artist, Paul Coker, and he was the person that created the Frosty the Snowman cartoon for Rankin and Bass back in the 70s. And he actually he lived in Santa Fe and entered several of our art shows, and he just passed away this week. So he was 94 or something, you know, but yeah, he was a really nice guy. So. But Sarah Blumenshine, she's one of our excellent still life artists. She does like classical still life work. So, and Lucy Finch, she's new to our society, but I thought that was a beautiful little still life that she's done. That's in right over there.
Yeah.
Toby Clement has 3 stunning sunsets here. And she will be, as Michelle mentioned, be doing a demonstration in September.
Yeah, so the demonstration is actually August 14th. So next Sunday, Toby Clement will be here at 1 o'clock.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. She's gonna be outside on the east lawn. We have a tent out there, so she'll use that. Yeah.
And Paul Murray, I want to talk about this one a little bit, and it's right over on the wall there. But I've learned through several workshops that if you want to make something brighter, you don't use a brighter pastel. Use the brightest pastel and then darken the background so that the brightest pastel really stands out. So if you notice, it shows up more on the painting itself, using the background of sort of a medium gray like that. It almost looks like there's a light coming out from inside the mountain there. So it's an interesting technique. So, and there's another one of Paul's, again, using the dark around to make the yellow just glow. So, and he'll be doing that one's in September?
That's the 28th.
Yeah, August 28th.
Oh, August
Or,
28th.
well, sorry.
I was wrong both times.
August, yeah.
Next slide. John Despain, he's relatively new to our society. He's not a new artist, but yeah, I thought this painting was just absolutely stunning. So, and not being an egotist, I threw this one in there only, well, not, yeah, I'm an egotist, yeah. I wanted to point out that if any of y'all get involved in pastel, if you look at the prospectuses, it always says 85% soft pastel. Well, soft pastel, there's a few manufacturers that manufacture really soft pastels. Terry Ludwig, I mean, they almost fall apart in your hand. I mean, they're just soft feeling, but not all pastels are soft. New pastels are little rectangular or square sticks, square elongate sticks that are hard, and pastel pencils are also hard because it's almost like a lead, but it's actually pastel. So I had Nancy Schrock asked me the other day, she said, well, I used to work in colored pencil, and you know, I would like to use pastel pencil. She said, is that what you use? I said, yeah. And she said, well, that's not soft pastel. I said, oh yeah, it is. I said, and your pastel is soft pastel. She said, well, what is not soft pastel? I said, oil pastel. So I mean, it's deceiving. And, you know, the only thing that's not allowed is using oil pastels here. So, but yeah, I blocked in the eggs and the plate and the background, but then used pastel pencils to do the detail on the eggs. And it seemed to come out to my liking. So next slide. And thank you very much for attending.
Yeah, Nicholas, could you tell us about how this show came about, the national exhibition, and how people get into the show? Like,
Sure.
thank
You mean from the beginning, or?
Yeah, if you want to talk about how it came about, and then how the current people that are featured, how they get into the
Okay, sure.
shows.
The society had been around for, like I said, started in 1989. It wasn't until, I believe, 1992 that the first national show happened. And national shows, a lot of pastel societies around the country have found it's a lot of work, a lot of money. I mean, a lot of times it's not a money-making proposition, you know, because but it's something that we've just had a passion for the entire time, and we've kept it going. We skipped one year due to the fact that we were changing venues. We used to be at the Hispanic Arts Center at Expo New Mexico in Albuquerque, and during the early years, Weems Gallery would have what was known as the Weems Fest, and it would be one weekend during the entire month that we were there, and it would just bring a lot of throughput, you know, not necessarily people that were buying anything, but they would just, you know, a lot of people would actually see things and finally come by. And they retired, or they actually changed it to their own little gallery and stopped going to the Expo New Mexico. And we were there like alone, trying to get people to come to Expo New Mexico just to see us, you know, and it's like, and during the weekends they charge a fee, a parking fee and everything. So my goodness, you know, so we decided that was no longer the venue we wanted to be at. And then we went to Sorrel Sky Gallery in Santa Fe. We were there for 2 years. They held a very nice show for us, you know, their entire second floor. They would take their artists' work down, except the sculpture would stay in the center, and put our work up, and it was wonderful. It's hard for a gallery to take their own art artists down during an entire month, you know. So then we were fortunate enough to have the Millicent Rogers Museum take us on last year, and we've been very fascinated, and they've been so enthusiastic about it. And in order to get into our show, a prospectus comes out every year. We have to keep revising the prospectus because what was true last year isn't false this year. There are a few things that the big winner that we had last year actually won a big award in the Pastel Journal magazine before he entered our show, and it's like we had to actually change it so you can't have won a big award somewhere else, you know, because we do have the restriction that if you've won a national show award, you can't enter that in our show. But the prospectus comes out, and usually we have about 2-month window where you can enter our show. And again, it has to be 85% soft pastel. And we have a size limitation. It can't be smaller than 8 by 10 or larger than 36 by 36. So image size. And then once you enter the show, there's a jurying process. We pick 3 different jurors every year from across the country. And it back in the early day, it used to be slides. You had to enter the show with slides. You had to like put the little metal tape around it to crop it. You know, it was murder. And Sarah Blumenschein actually was the person back then that would gather the slides, and we had to keep it local because the slide projector had to be sent around to people in Albuquerque, and so it was awful. Once it came out to the digital thing, now it's a wonder. We have people submit under this a website called showsubmit.com. They actually take care of everything. As the entries come in, I will get little thumbnails of each of the entries. I can actually go in and look at them. We can check the size to make sure, because invariably there are people that, oh, this is a 6 by 5, you know, one that we said 8 by 10, that's not eligible. So we check each as they come in, and then at the end of the entry period, we have a deadline. The entries are sent by Show Submit to each of the jurors, and they rate each painting from 1 to 10, 1 being least, 10 being best. And it is, we don't give them restrictions on what to look for because they're artists, you know. They judge by composition, by color, by contrast, and they do a good job, you know. We usually pick like 3, we try to pick 3 different types of people, like a portrait artist, a still life artist, and of course, landscape, because landscape is the most popular. But they do the jurying. Then when the jury results come back to us, then we have to sort it out. Okay, like in the case of here, we wanted 66 paintings. So I think we should 65, but we ended up with 66. And what I took was the first of all, let me say how these are rated. The top painting is 3 10s, 30 score. So they rank these in scores. So we took the top ones of the people that said that they were going to be hand delivering or shipping to the museum. We also gave them the option of digital only, so we could have the virtual show. We started from the top and then went all the way down until we got to the 60. I think it was the 54th painting was in, we go by thresholds. Okay, there's the 30, and then the next one is like somebody got 2 10s and a 9, and then on and on. And we got down to the 18s where, like, say you had 3 6s or a 10 and 2 4s or something like that. we got down to 18 and we had 54 paintings at that point. So then what we do is we use what's known as a mean deviation to go into the next threshold. And a mean deviation, it's like a person that gets 3 6s means that all the 3 jurors like the painting equally. If someone got a 10 and 2 4s like that, well, one person liked it, but 2 people didn't. So those would be lower in the mean deviation. So we start from the top mean deviation and went down until we got to the 66th painting, and that's how it was decided. So that's the whole process that we go through. Then it's notifying the artists of who got in and the sad news if you didn't get anything in, you know. So, but yeah, and then from there on, then we come to the point early this week where we had people delivering the paintings, and the people that shipped paintings were brought in too. So yeah. So any other questions?
What was the farthest person painting, you know, distance wise?
Pardon me?
Who was the most distant painter?
I believe Doug Twiddale's out of like East Coast somewhere. So.
It says National Pastel.
Uh-huh.
Is that a brand for the whole country, or is that your particular show that you do?
It's our particular show is national, but it's always been across the country as far as
And do other pastel societies in other states able to do a national?
they have their own national show,
Okay.
right? Mhm. But and of course with the non-hand delivered or the ones that went digital only, it's international since the top winner was from China. So I mean, it's I think from now on we're going to only have the images, the paintings judged live. It just becomes too cumbersome to have the awards in different countries. So we might still have a virtual show, but just let people know that if it's in the digital show, it won't be judged. It'll be only the live. Yes.
Yes, sir. How do we get a schedule of the demonstration since you're obviously not reliable?
It's on the website. It's on the Melissa Rogers website.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. And then if you all want to, you can follow us on Facebook and or Instagram, and we post there
All right.
regularly.
Yes,
It's also on the flyers in the lobby.
Oh, okay, great.
And my apologies for not. Yes.
Hi, my question is, I'm curious, in the history of pastel paintings, are there any abstract artists who use this medium?
Sure. And in fact, one of the paintings that won an award in this show, she's actually a local lady, but she was going to be out of state, so she couldn't enter. She decided to go with the digital only, but it's an abstract painting that got in. So it varies on year to year on how many abstracts get in or how many abstracts are actually entered. It's not that they're not accepted. It's that not many people enter abstract. Well, I can't say not many people enter abstracts, but again, it depends on what the jurors like. So, yeah. One of my favorite artists who has always done like animals and stuff like that, she was going to enter an abstract. Something came up and she wasn't able to, but she showed me some of the paintings that she would have, and they were beautiful. So, yeah.
I just want to make a quick comment, quick question. It came up at the opening on Friday, the possibility of having workshops next year during this exhibition. So my name's Karen, for those of you that I haven't met before. I'm the Director of Education at the Melissa Rogers Museum. And so we're going to be gathering names if people are interested, and then I'll contact you next year because we're thinking of having a workshop series during the pastel exhibition.
Wow,
Great. So if you are, then you can leave your name and an email address at the front desk.
Okay, for you.
Yes,
Okay.
I will take that list and I will let the front desk person.
Okay.
Sure.
I just had a quick question. The 85% soft pastels, why is there, I know nothing about pastels at all? Why is there this preference for soft pastels versus oil pastels?
Oil pastels are basically like oil paint in a stick. It's it almost feels like, I don't know if you've worked with oil pastels before, but they're almost like crayon type of a feel.
Oh, okay.
It's you can get some vivid and deep colors and things with oil pastels, but it's just not this show. You know, it's just the soft pastel is kind of a separate medium in itself. You know.
Okay, so that's why people could, if they wanted to, do a little tiny bit of touch up, the 15% if they wanted to.
Yeah,
But it's not
and
bigger.
like some of the paper could be like the watercolor background, you know, which would, as long as you've got 85% pastel on it, even. But we did have one year where somebody took a photograph and did pastel on much of it, and somebody pointed out to us, we didn't even catch it, but you could see that it was a photographic background, and it's like, it was too, she won an award for it. It's like, it was too late to reject it. So, but yeah, certain things are, in fact, now after that, we put a thing in the prospectus, no photographs with.
I have a question. So along with that, do artists use it like in mixed media?
There are some that do mixed media pastel, sure.
So
They,
what are they using it for in competition?
sometimes again with watercolor, sometimes with like collage type things, you know. The sky's the limit on it, but again, you know, if it's entered in our show, it has to be with that. Mhm.
Who else other than Degas would be somebody we might recognize the name and thought, I didn't know they were pastels.
I know that Salvador Dali did actually a few pastels, but I mean, he wasn't a pastelist per se. Offhand, I don't know anybody that was more exclusively pastel than not. But
How many members of the New Mexico Pastel Society are there?
right now, there's 162. So it's pretty sizable. It varies during the time of the year. You get a lesser, the fee to enter our show is like $5 less if you're a member. So some people join as a member during the time of entries to get the discount, which works fine too. But we'll take it however we get it.
Do you do other shows or is this your?
Right now, at the Los Lunas Museum, we have a signature member show. And I should explain signature members. We didn't have any new signature members this year. But in order to achieve signature membership in our show, and similar in other societies too, you have to you get 12 points. Now, if you get 1 to 3 paintings entered into a show, you get 3 points, even if it's just 1. Okay, so the minimum of getting paintings in each year would be 4 years. You'd have the 12 points and become a signature member. If you win awards, you get more points. So you can actually achieve it sooner and become a signature member sooner. And a signature member means that you can put PSNM under your name, you know. Not a lot of us do that, but it's a nice thought, you know. But we're having a signature member show right now at the Los Lunas Museum in Los Lunas. And then I believe I won't even say what date because I would probably have it wrong. I think it's in early September. They'll add our members show. They'll take another one of the rooms, and we had upcoming members or members that haven't become signature members yet that entered this show, and some beautiful artwork there too. So yeah, we have during the whole virus crisis, you know, a lot of stuff went by the wayside. We still kept our national show going, but these member shows didn't happen, but now they are again.
Is it a requirement that they must be for sale too?
Yeah, well, every show we have, we require that the paintings are for sale, and we just push they sell.
I have a question
question about tools that, like you mentioned that when you show the photos of those cakes, you also show the picture of like a little spongy kind of thing.
Right, and the stuff.
And when I played with the pastel, I had a lot of satisfaction by working with hands. But besides that, and maybe especially early days, what sort of tools did they use besides just carving it and fine line, but there's like smudging tools or.
Right, sure. I mean, I think there's always been that type of thing, using the smudge, blending and smudging and stuff like that. And people have worked with their fingers too. But the pan pastels, it's kind of the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
because you can do that type of thing without getting your fingers dirty. It's like I said.
That they had back then.
Right.
Cloth.
In the old days, they did. I mean, in the old days, they could have actually just taken the pigment and used the pigment straight without any binder in it. So, it would be the same thing. You dip your fingers in the powder and just work it that way. So that'd probably be the way to go there. So, yes.
Make that.
I was just walking around and I noticed that one artist, I think the one who's going to be here, Toby Clement, he's got three pieces, and it seems like for such a small show, people would consider having just the judges would have just one per artist instead of their two valid rays.
We have always gone with, if you enter 3, you can get all 3 in. The reason that, and there are some shows that do that, where you enter 3 and you can only get 2 in or 1 in or something like that. But at how the paintings were rated by the jurors, if you do that, you're actually taking away from something that the jurors actually thought was really nice and putting in something that the jurors didn't think. I mean, not that were bad, it's just that so we try to keep it just straight from the top and not restrict anything as far. That's just our society's kind of the rule we've gone by. More questions?
Do they have I'm assuming they do have an actual website for your society.
We do. It's www.pastelsnm for societynewmexico.com. .org. Sorry.
And do you market pictures on that website?
Yeah, we have. Right now, what we have is the link to the virtual show, so you can go in and see that. And they also have the digital catalog that you can open that, download it, and open it up and see all of the paintings, see all of the awards and everything on that.
But also for your members, though, are they able to market through your website?
No. We have a Facebook page that people can do some of that with. I mean, it's more for the Pastel Society itself, but yeah, most of the people have their own website. Works pretty well for that. Not necessarily marketing, but it does show the paintings.
And when these sell up here at the museum, does the museum get a percentage of that?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Does the museum get a percentage of
It's-
sales?
Right. So I mean, we're good partners actually.
So if a painting sells, did you replace it with another one?
We will not, but the painting will get a red dot and it'll stay up until the end of the month. So it no loss that way. It makes it a little bit more cumbersome because people maybe from out of state or whatever, but we'll work with them shipping whatever too. So, but it works better just to keep the show in the exact order that you had. I've been in shows where we'll bring in another painting to put in once to sell it, but this works out better this way.
So for this show, for any sales, we mark it sold, and then this show is going to run through September 21st. So then, on September 22nd, then those arrangements would go into effect. So we're going to work with House Creating on this show for shipping. So if anybody wanted their painting shipped to them, then grading company will come and pick them all up and then, work directly with the collector. Or we can hold them here and then people can come back to the museum to pick them up, and we can do that by appointment. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad you could be here. I hope